The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you in on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. It is gorgeous weather here in eastern Nebraska. So if you're off work or maybe your boss is cool, crack a Cornhead Lager today.
Or if your boss is cool.
Well, hey, one or the other. We need to get some Cornhead Lager sent off to Coach McBride. He was asking for that. So that is on the to-do list. On our to-do list today, talk some Big Red football, some meltdown mentions as well with Husker Baseball last night. That was ugly. Checked in on it. Oh, great, 6-2. And then it wasn't. That was rough for the Big Red. Bigger implications than just a thud at home. We'll get to coming up. Brandon Vogel joins us from Counter Read, counterread.com. Vogues has got the thoughts that many of you have right now with the hype that is growing with Nebraska football into your summer off season. And it's kind of been a week long of one national media pundit and another. And pretty soon you'll have more jump on that bandwagon with Nebraska as maybe a trendy team. We started talking about it with Mitch Sherman way back on Tuesday. So we'll ask that question here as we know that the national media, some are buying into the Nebraska hype, and we know that the draft has been ongoing by the networks for primetime airing of games. We asked the question today, will that Nebraska hype carry over into and result in Nebraska being in more primetime games? We're wondering about the Buffs and Nebraska at night for NBC. We've hit on it at least 3 straight days. At one point, it's gotten mentioned. I know Sam McEwen and Evan Bland and Tom Chattel, friends of the show, do a great job with their podcast. I know it's been mentioned about USC also being circled. Now, I think Sam was talking about that maybe being a Friday night affair, but still, you get those helmets together, and folks will want to watch. Numbers to get in, 489-1240 or 800-825-5865.
A Friday night game against USC would kind of ruin the Elijah Herbel road trip to Los Angeles. It was going to be the Hail Varsity Radio road trip, but now Schmitty's, I want to go to Columbus. So
we've got Columbus circled.
I think I've had Los Angeles circled since the schedule came out, and Friday night might ruin everything.
You know, I think the time to go to L.A. is not wrong in mid-November, but it's got to be a Saturday night ball game, and I'm out on USC this year.
What if we find cheap flights instead of a
There's
roadie?
no such thing.
See what I can do.
Oh, well.
I got connections in L.A., Schmitty.
Okay, great. That's wonderful.
No, I don't.
You're lying. Let's get into the starting 5. Watch the show. Check the show out. Different ways you can do it. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the channel. All sorts of good stuff posted on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio, and find us on Twitter. Give us a follow at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah. Brian sends an email in asking about the 4 C's he has heard us talk about. I'll read that in a moment. But we have a very special visitor we'll get into coming up. That's David Sanders Jr. this weekend for Nebraska football, an official visit. The number 1 offensive tackle in the country. The dude is a monster, 6'7", 285, out of the Providence Day School in Charlotte. He had released his top 6 That was Clemson, and that's who's kind of the favorite right now, where he's crystal balled to. Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, South Carolina, but Nebraska getting an official visit. Number 2 player in the country. Brandon Vogel in 15 minutes in hour 2. Longtime member of Nebraska football, part of the Director of Player Support and Outreach. Ron Brown will kick off hour 2 with us. Get coach's thoughts on the spring. And then Gary Barnett, more on some of this Husker hype, what he's hearing in Boulder, what he's hearing from some of the folks he knows nationally. Danny Burke, burksbeat.com, to get all your NHL and NBA gambling needs. Our shout-outs start out with Black Hills Brennan. He is first in the stream. And he says, let's have ourselves a Thursday. You put this up from Anonymous. If the Colorado game is at night and we end up losing, well, I guess it's easier to hide a body at night if the need arises. Okay. There we go, Anonymous. Snitley is here. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. He's third. Nebraska baseball is dead to me. A lot of Nebraska fans peeved. Jeff is 4. Justin checks in at 5. Tuck, good to see you and have you in. He says, I want everyone to be aware that at some point today I will be throwing a heating pad. All right, Tuck, you just let her. I hope you threw it last night. We have Eric. NASCAR Eric is in. Cliff is here from Florida. Cliff, good to have you. Dion back. Dion is in. Brandon is in. Good to have all of you. Patrick is here. Along with the other Dave. What's up, other Dave? Good to have you. Montana Husker fan is here, as well as Chris and Moonbot7. He's early to tell us what's up, nerds. And Cornhusker Corner says what's up.
And we do need to bring up quickly this comment here from Anonymous saying we should take our Jinx Roadshow to Ohio State instead of USC because Anonymous thinks Nebraska can beat USC this year unless we're there.
Yeah, we're the problem.
Before we dive too deeply into our show today, Schmidt, I do have a correction to make from the show from yesterday. Not the first time I've said something dumb. It is the rare occasion where I am not proven wrong 3 months later. Usually I say something dumb in May and it gets proven wrong in September and I can just pretend it never happened. Yesterday I said something dumb that I'd like to correct less than 24 hours later. And that is that conference title winners, we had this discussion yesterday about the importance of conference title games. Conference title winners are guaranteed, if you're one of the 4 highest ranked conference champions, a bye in the college football playoff. That is the baked-in incentive for conference champions into that system. I did not have that information yesterday. I should have. I apologize, and considering I was proven wrong quickly, I'm going to make that correction now as to not spread misinformation. So look at Elijah Herbel being a stand-up journalist and admitting when he was wrong. I was wrong yesterday, making the correction today. Now we can move on with the show.
Your whole point was that are you worried about players opting out?
Yes.
And that's a fair take in the NIL era. But there is fine print, all good. I haven't done all my math on what the hell the playoffs actually look like. I will worry about that if the need arises with the local team. Playoff baseball, well, the feel is this. Midweek for Nebraska, about everybody that comes in of substance or of region, treat Nebraska like it is playoff baseball. And the South Dakota State Fighting Jacks did some work, and it was a local flavor with Mr. Kozel's 3-run bomb over the right field fence that did in Nebraska. 2 bombs, 6 RBI for the Waverly Viking. And Nebraska absolutely incinerating a 6-2 lead with just 6 outs needed. South Dakota State winning 10-6. This is bigger than what the hell. This is wave goodbye, Elijah, to any hopes of regional hosting.
It's a quad 4 loss. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. So a quad 4 loss, as you said, it only dropped Nebraska a couple spots in RPI, but now it's a big hill to climb to try to make it back into hosting regional. I think it's the nail in the coffin. And we've talked about the midweek struggles. It still comes down to winning your weekend series and doing well in conference. But this one's extra bad. I know getting swept by Creighton has felt bad, This is a South Dakota State
Creighton's
team.
good.
I mean, we laid it out yesterday. It's a South Dakota State team that tends to lose by about 10 runs when they play Power 5 midweek.
And not score 10 on you.
Rough pitching performance. I mean, Brockett was fine to start out. I wonder if they were limiting his pitches in order to...
Well, he's the weekend. We'll hear from Will Bolt.
weekend.
Here's the problem. Nebraska got too freaking cute with going to different arms. And you went from Brockett to Clark. Clark struck out 4 of his 6 batters. He left. Worthley came in, went 1 1/3. Freilich allowed 3 hits to load the bases. Kyle Perry came in, put out the fire. Then you yank Perry for whatever reason. Here comes Rand Sanders and gets a hit, and there's an error. There's the 3-run bomb from Waverly Viking. And then here comes Dice, and Dice got lit up for 4 hits and 4 runs, and he's sick about it. Don't kid yourself. But you could have stopped at Perry to shut this thing down, presuming it doesn't turn into a meth explosion, as you kept going to arms. And what do you do there? I mean, you're asking for problems with a bullpen that has had issues holding leads from time to time. And you're trying to get guys work, though. That's the other side of the coin, Elijah. And South Dakota State had enough, and Will Bolt, you'll hear it in a minute, was right. They just kind of took it from Nebraska. But Will Bolt chimes in, emotions here, cut 1 after the loss.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously stinks. You leave the door a little bit cracked, and, they got a good offensive lineup, and, you got a chance to go finish that thing off. You got a 4-run lead with 2 innings to go. I mean, that should be enough to finish the game, and it wasn't. And, credit to them. They were on the right side of some pretty big swings tonight.
Those sounds you hear behind Will Bolt, they're not of Rob Childress
taking a bat
taking a bat to the bullpen. That is the wonderful ground crew getting the stadium ready for Friday.
That's wrong.
Well, come on, play it again. Play it again.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously stinks. You leave the door a little bit cracked, and they got a good offensive lineup, and you got a chance to go finish that thing off. You got a 4-run lead with 2 innings to go. I mean, that should be enough to finish the game, and it wasn't. And credit to them. They were on the right side of some pretty big swings tonight.
You got to laugh at it. I'm sorry, Nebraska baseball fans, but just use your imagination here. Well, pitching plan. Let's hear from Will Bolt. Cut 3.
Well, Brockett obviously got us off to a start. I mean, we're looking for a 3rd starter for the weekend, so, he got us off to a great start. We had the lead, and we had all of our bullpen guys rested. So, we didn't want to go into this weekend without having Brockett available.
And, again, there's credit given from Will Bolt, cut 4 on South Dakota State just taking it.
I mean, they took it from us, right? I mean, it wasn't walks. It wasn't, a whole lot of that stuff. I mean, the free old hitter gets a 2-strike jam job, bang, bang play at first base. And, that's, it's just kind of the way it goes sometimes. It stinks. It's baseball. You got to finish, though. I mean, we had all the guys on the mound that have been there and done that at this point, and, the long ball ended up hurting us.
The beating intensified and then subsided towards the end of that question. Last thought here, cut 7 here, about second-guessing said bullpen.
I mean, sure, you could second-guess any move that was made in the pen tonight.
He was... I love Will Bolt, man. I do, and you're just kind of taking it on the chin and see if the fellas rally.
It's disappointing. The text from Java I got last night when the game ended, I cannot say
can
on
you
the
not
air.
say on air? Yeah,
I cannot say it on the air. And it just kind of represents what last night was. You should have seen it coming. You felt this one was different because South Dakota State, especially on the pitching side of things, not a great year from them. Not a great year from the squad as a whole. You got a 4-run lead, 6-2 going into the 8th. You feel pretty good. Just whenever you're playing the odds game, whenever you have all those different guys from the bullpen, it's shown this year at some point
Something's going wrong.
Something's going to go wrong for somebody in the bullpen whenever you just try to send it to more and more different guys. Mm-hmm. Eventually it's going to go wrong for somebody, and when the wheels fell off, they really fell off last night. That momentum was zapped from Haymarket like that.
Yeah, I want to shout out Cliff real quick. Cliff has been a loyal listener. Appreciate you, Cliff, in the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube.
That's awesome.
Cliff got his cancer scan today, cancer-free for 9 months. Cheers to you, Cliff. Good.
And how about
Good for you,
this
man.
offer from Moonbot? Moonbot says, after 12 months, he's buying you a jersey with the number of his choice. Cliff will send you something as well.
That's good. That's nice. That's the way to go.
Cliff, do you like Hail Varsity Radio coffee mugs?
Sure. That'd be all right. Matthew checks in the stream and says maybe you two should go out of town for the home games this year. I will take credit for the Iowa win in Iowa City, but
That one time?
that one time, it all started in Ireland. Forgive me. Anonymous, we've got the most experienced O-line ever. Our 8th best wide receiver would have been our 2nd best 5 years ago. Again, Anonymous says we have future NFL tight ends. There's no reason for us not to be good next year.
Let me give you a couple reasons.
NU Grandpa is in. Mr. Snitley has a comment. Crew is in. Brandon Vogel is next with Hail Varsity.
And we're up against it for the reasons.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We had Brandon Vogel in the green room, and we had him up on the screen here on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Tucci, gang. So Chris is just calling Vogues Mr. Tucci, as in the Stanley Tucci. Should we try the phone?
Maybe give him one more chance here. Have we gotten any communication with Vogel? No. I think the worst case scenario here, if we can get him on stream with no video.
You just don't want to put that picture back up.
That's exactly what I don't want to do. The picture of him from the rumor from Bo's house was the rumor, I believe.
I don't know. Vogues, there's a picture we use for you. And it's you on a couch, and you've got an incredible yes, that's the picture, and you've got a wonderful smile. I love the couch. You have the black shirt blazer from Gary Michaels on, and you have a great grin. But that's the picture we use. We need the back or the inside cover of your biography with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion, or was that the picture? Is he not hearing us? Vogues, do you have us, sir? No, he doesn't. So why don't we do this? Why don't we text him and say, we'll call you in 2 seconds?
Well, if we shut off the camera, maybe he can't hear us still. Probably doesn't help. I was going to say shutting off the camera tends to help with the bandwidth, if that's the issue here.
Yeah, he's frozen now, so he's going Han Solo with us.
We can hear him in the background.
Yeah, but that means he
quite
can't.
frustrated.
Let's just move on and get a hold of him on the phone. That'd be wonderful. So Vogues will join us via the phone in a minute. We're going to be forced to put the picture up, I do believe. 489-1240, numbers to get in. 800-825-5865. But Brandon Vogel with Counter Read going to join us momentarily, and with Vogues, he did his column today on Nebraska and the preseason top 25, which is wonderful for a lot of Nebraska fans. And is it going to be a different kind of preseason / summer of hype for Nebraska when we look at 2024 compared to 2019? We have him on the horn, Brandon Vogel, with us. Vogues, we weren't able...
Not yet.
You're calling. Okay. So I will introduce him again. This has been a freaking train wreck. Forgive me. So we'll see if he answers or not. So power ratings v top 25 is something we can look at. We're going to try this again. Vogues, do you have us, sir? Okay. Let's just text him and call him, please. We'll do that. So we'll do Vogues. more news here when it comes to recruiting. We told you about David Sanders Jr., the 5-star offensive tackle out of Charlotte. That's big. Nebraska, had another 5-star in Michael Terry III, the athlete out of Texas. And he was in for the spring game. You look at that, and, of course, Dylan Raiola, your 5-star and birthday boy today. So Nebraska's been able to pull some big fish. We now welcome Brandon Vogel in on the horn. Vogues, do you hear us now?
I got you.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, that's good. So
I thought Schmidt was going to go full Rob Childress postgame on.
Well, a little bit. I was getting a little pissed. That's okay. So let's talk about your column here with counterread.com. And I want your thoughts here with Nebraska getting some preseason hype, some rankings, Joel Klatt specifically, Tom Fornelli as well with CBS Sports. And you explored just where it was back in 2019 for Nebraska as one of those maybe trendy teams. And you look at this season, and let's talk about why it can be different, Bud. Why can it be different? Why can Nebraska maybe live up to some expectations this year opposed to the last time?
Yeah, that's kind of the fundamental question, right? And it's a little bit crazy, as I wrote in today's story on counterread.com, like using SP Plus preseason ratings, like that 2019 team that I think people remember, was just kind of like, oh, Scott Frost year 2. This is the chance. Which there were reasons to believe that. It was 39th in those rankings. Nebraska right now in 2024 SP Plus preseason is 39th. So based on that ranking system, you're starting from a similar spot. Why is this one different? I think there's a returning experience angle to that, particularly on defense and particularly with the heights that the defense reached last year. You can do the one-score losses piece of it, which you could do with that 2018 Nebraska team looking towards 2019 a little bit, but I don't think to this degree. I think the big piece of it, though, like the part that's tough to quantify, but the part that speaks the most to me is if you ask Matt Rule right now, he'll tell you, no, we're not the number 22 team in the country, which they're not. He said it recently. This is still a 5-7 team until you're not. I think there's a little bit of a different mindset this time around. And, it's tough to quantify, like I said, but I think that's a potential difference maker.
Seems like they've been reminded time and time again publicly, and I'm sure privately, about beyond the record. I mean, just the emphasis, the push, the intensity of this spring camp. I mean, it was pretty torrid, pretty physical as spring camps go, and it's all about earning it, which is great. But that is so good to keep that, as Nick Saban calls it, rat poison away, because you can get caught up, can't you? Everyone likes to be told how good they are, or that it's going to be okay, without actually having to show that it was okay.
Yeah, it's funny since Lane Kiffin has co-opted it to remember that. Oh yeah, that was actually a Nick Saban quote that Lane Kiffin found funny and probably some truth in, and now uses all the time. But I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. Matt Rule often mentions a Bill Walsh book, which is an odd book but a good book, called Score Takes Care of Itself. And I think what you need to know from that is basically the title. And I do think Rule, from what I've seen so far, does a really good job of kind of coaching to that, which is like, hey, it's not about like we win this game or we lose this game. It's about everything. It's about what we do to get to the point where it's like we don't have to worry. Like, you don't worry about about winning and losing. You obviously want to win. It's like, but it's all about like every down, every practice, et cetera, et cetera. You hear a lot more of that from Nebraska staff than I think from multiple staffs prior to this.
It's Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Vogues, one of the things we talked about yesterday on this show was a Twitter DM I got in with some interesting stats. I wanted to bring them up to you in a roundabout way. Essentially, if you look at the 5-year recruiting ranking composite out of high school from 24/7 Sports, Nebraska, all 5 of their wins last year came from teams that were outside the top 44 of that ranking. So 5-0 there, 0-7 against teams in the top 44. As you look at Nebraska's 2024 schedule, 8 teams find themselves below that 44th ranking. Colorado's kind of a swing team based on if you factor in the transfers or not. But that's a long-winded way to ask you, is there more reason for optimism in your mind because of Nebraska and how they've seemingly improved through the offseason, especially at the quarterback position? Or is there more optimism for you based on Nebraska's opponents that they're facing in 2024 and the way their schedule shapes up for them, particularly those first 7?
Yeah, really good way to frame that, because those are 2 variables. Like, we can all play the game, and it's a fun game to play of like sit back and look at a team's schedule and say, oh yeah, that's good, or that's going to be tough, or so on and so forth. And to a degree, but you never fully know. So it's a little bit dangerous in that regard. Quarterbacks even wilder in terms of probably starting a true freshman, but probably a very good true freshman. So what are you going to get? I think the schedule piece weighs a little bit heavier for me just because you got a little more data on that. And, you can look at Nebraska's schedule and say if they play close to their ability each time out, it's pretty favorable, or at least it should be. So that's always going to be a big piece of these ratings. And, okay, so five of the teams they beat hit this recruiting threshold last year. This year, there are 8 teams on schedule that do that. 8 wins feels like pretty doable. I mean, Joe Klatt put Nebraska at 22. You get to 8-4, you're going to be within striking distance of 22, if not in there, depending on who the wins come against. So, and their season win total to start was 7.5. So, I mean, it catches people's eye because of the history of Nebraska recently. But 22 did not seem wild, crazy, or out of the question at all.
Brandon Vogel's with us. Counterread, counterread.com, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, we've got about 2 minutes here, and then we'll keep you for a couple minutes of overtime on the other side. So when we talk about schedule and Nebraska hype, how do you think that's going to translate when it comes to the national media, and then how about the national networks? With the picking, the war room that's been ongoing here since Wednesday of networks picking their primetime games.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. UTEP also under a first-year head coach. Nebraska's it'll be as big a favorite in that game as it is in any game this season. So you get a win there. The Colorado-Nebraska game, I think, just based on the history between the programs and also who happens to coach the Buffs, gets you a pretty good spot there. And then from then, it's kind of up to Nebraska. You got an FCS game after that, Illinois, which is kind of 5-7, 6-6, 7-5-ish team, it looks like. But you get that at home, and then Purdue. I mean, it's not crazy to look at this and say, well, if you play really well, you could be 6-0 after that, or 5-0 after that. And at that point, you move into kind of October. The other thing I wrote about this week, Nebraska's middle 4 games. And that's where things get pretty interesting with some teams that are kind of tough to assess in some ways.
Vogues, hang on for us. We'll be back with you on the other side, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. We need to... Can you send me that screenshot pic? Because I need to know where it is originated from. The screenshot of Vogel on the couch.
Yes, I can do that. Okay, there's a lot of screenshots you could be talking about there.
No, the screenshot of Vogue's, and I have Dream Like a Champion, his book with John Cook. I don't know if that was on the inside cover or not. We need to know the genesis of this photo. More with Brandon Vogel on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
A few more minutes with us here. Brandon Vogel, counterread.com. Ron Brown to kick off hour 2. Gary Barnett, his thoughts on Nebraska and the Buffs. in hour 2. Vogues, I want to get a reaction here to another 5-star visit this weekend. I know you check in on recruiting quite often. David Sanders Jr. out of Charlotte, North Carolina, Providence Day School, the number 1 offensive tackle. He'd had his Super 6 tweeted out just not that long ago. That's Bama, that's Georgia, that's Ohio State, Clemson's crystal balled. And now Nebraska is not only in communication, they're getting an official visit. South Carolina and Tennessee rounding out that Super 6. Nebraska was not included on. What's your reaction here to the Big Red getting this monster at 6'7", 285 to town here tomorrow?
Yeah, big in other ways aside from just his stature. One, like, quarterbacks are important. Getting offensive linemen like that is probably 1B, I think, in terms of recruiting, because hopefully you're going to be able to keep offensive linemen and develop them. It's going to be harder for them to come in and step in right away. It's probably going to happen at Colorado this year at tackle, and I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign for the Buffs. We'll see. But nothing replaces that kind of like size and talent. And for Nebraska to come kind of out of nowhere, I think is a good sign as well, because, as we've talked about on the show before, like, this is your time to strike in terms of recruiting. And now if Nebraska goes on and has a season that exceeds expectations, then this current recruiting cycle also becomes your time to strike. But this is kind of the one, year 2 under new staff, that you can lock in and say, okay, you should make some moves here, and something like this would definitely be one.
Brandon, how do you think Matt Rule balances that nature of wanting to maximize what you have on the team right now while also taking care of matters that aren't going to be an issue until 3 or 4 years from now in the recruiting process, if you follow what I'm saying with that question?
Yeah. I think he's done a good job. I think we got a little peek of that with Dylan Raiola, who stands out in terms of his recruiting rankings and Nebraska's history there of, like, Matt Rule comes across as, like, extremely, extremely fair to me in terms of his players and the guys on his roster right now, but it's also his job to go out there and do what they can to get the best players available. So I don't have a ton of worry about potential issues, the things that we could kind of see down the road there, because I do think he's pretty upfront and honest when these things arise.
Vogues, the picture origin, the still photo of you on the couch, blazer, and I was repeating this earlier, you couldn't hear us, but you're on a couch, there's 3 pictures in the backdrop. It's earlier in your career. Was that the picture on the inside of your book with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion, or was that just a requested by other wonderful publishers? We need a PR photo, Mr. Vogel. Can you send us one? Tell me about that picture. You can put the picture up if you can.
I can send you one, and I should, because that one's 15 years old.
Is it 15?
Maybe older than that.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't get a picture on the inside of To Dream Like a Champion, because I haven't won national title. It's fair enough. But it was a quote unquote author photo for a website I did some work for. It was taken in Omaha. That's not my couch. That's not my house. So it was very beautiful and well appointed. So yeah, that was maybe one of my earliest kind of promo photos that I had to use.
We need to collect headshots of all of our guests.
I've tried.
Have you? Well, I'm not knocking. I'm saying, like, because Vogues has this one, we have, and there's one of JB, John Baylor, had a black and white when I first started working for him like 2 decades ago. It was when he was doing some stuff out in Hollywood. And it was really pretty classy. He had this dark turtleneck on. Mm-hmm. Dolman's got one, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. We'll pull it. There's Dolman's.
Yeah, look at that. Dolman's like, I'm going to give you an F.
Yeah,
right?
and poor Brandon sitting home, he cannot see what we're talking about.
But,
yeah, that one. The one that was really hard for me to find was a Jacob Padilla headshot. Yeah. I was searching for years until I finally got this one.
He's spinning the basketball on his index finger.
But Vogel, to get back to you, I will say, if that picture is 15 years old,
that's well done, sir.
You've aged like a fine wine, much like Stanley Tucci.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll take that all day and every day, and twice on Sundays.
So tell me about Counter Read. How do I subscribe, and what are you and Aaron Sorensen working on?
Yeah, just head on over to counterread.com. That's where you can read some of the stuff we were talking about today about Nebraska and that ranking from Joel Klatt and kind of remembrances of 2019. That's a free newsletter for anybody who wants to check that out. And then earlier this week, I wrote a little bit about the middle section of Nebraska's schedule. That's part of the series where I'm looking at all of Nebraska's opponents post-spring, which is fun for me at least. I don't know if it's fun for anybody to read, but hopefully, and if it's fun for you to read, you can. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. You can subscribe for free. Check it out for a little bit, and we'd love to have you as a paid subscriber eventually. We earned your trust, and you're having a good time there. So that's the pitch. Counterread.com.
Good enough. Brandon Vogel with his Vogues. We'll talk to you Saturday morning.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you. There he is, Brandon Vogel, with us from Counter Read, counterread.com. Hey, we got him on. Forgive my shortness.
Oh, it's okay. I think you handled it well.
I did not. I wanted to throw this microphone at the screen.
Better than at me.
No, it wasn't at you.
I'm glad.
The situation.
I'm glad because we
almost had a Bill O'Reilly moment.
I was gonna say, well, we almost tested if this double pane glass here was a good investment or not. I do that to keep myself
Count to
safe.
3. 1, 2, 3.
But I will say one more thing here as we're up against it. As we're talking about the headshots, got through Vogel's. Jacobs is hard to find. Mitch's is funny as we pull it up on the screen because Mitch looks like he wants to kill you. Mitch just looks so annoyed. I think Schmidt had a water take in the background.
About came out the nose.
Clausburn was damn near impossible to find a cover of.
We just got to do the old mafia. Well, that's not Clausburn. Yeah, it's
who is Clausburn really?
He's imaginary. He wears red.
That's the hard part of finding a cover for Claus. So
just find your normal mall Santa. And I would go Billy Bob Thornton from Bad Santa. It's where I'd go with that, except the old copyright thing. We'll wind down hour one. We're about 15 minutes away from Ron Brown, Director of Player Support and Outreach for Nebraska, and, of course, longtime assistant. His thoughts on the spring and just the work that Nebraska's been doing in Omaha. That is to kick off hour two. And former Buff coach Gary Barnett. Hail Varsity continues, powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, winding down hour one. I owe Elijah a steak. He had the Knicks last night. I had Indiana, and that did not go well for me or Mr. Carlisle. So we'll get some gambling advice in the end of hour two from Danny Burke, Burke's Best Bets.
Hey, it looked great at the end of the first half for the Pacers. Brunson was out. It was just the OG Anunoby show, and then OG Anunoby goes out in the second half with what looked like a worrisome hamstring injury, but here comes Jalen Brunson to the rescue. Questionable return, not in the postseason. He's not. And he saves my steak in a beer bet. Shout out Jalen Brunson.
Yes, I will collect from him. Reminder to get buckled up. Coaches make substitutions during the game to get the best player on the field. Getting behind the wheel after drinking also demands a substitution. Impaired driving is deceptively dangerous. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. So from a fear standpoint, you have felt afraid how many times in that booth, Elijah?
Roughly once, because we talked about it here with the potential for the mic to come through this double glass at me last segment.
Because of the situation.
Yeah, no, and it's one of the realities of live radio. To give everyone at home a peek behind the curtain, there are always those moments where deep down, there's an emotion you'll have on the air that is anger or frustration, whatever it be, and you're trying to keep that smile going and keep an entertaining show going despite the fact that you're seething.
We're still searching to do both, but...
But... like, in terms of true moments where I thought, wow, I might have just really screwed up and actually made somebody mad, I take it back to whenever I was first starting out. So this was within my first 6 months on the job, which is, as most people know, especially as the guy who is still in college, trying to make a good impression, trying to be here 5 years later, you want to be good. And I was trying to make a little joke whenever Searles, who joined us in studio one day, sat down.
Papa Searles.
And Schmitty, what is your lead off with Searles? We've been using it for years. Our favorite Husker NFLer, Jeremiah Searles.
Mm-hmm. NFL Husker.
Yeah.
Husker NFL offensive lineman, now agent.
Yes. Yeah. And you laid out our favorite former Husker, former NFLer, Jeremiah Searles, joins us in studio. And I remember making a joke like, you said favorite Husker, favorite NFLer. I'm looking around. I don't see Rex Burkhead in there. And the look.
How'd that go?
Oh, man, it looked like Searles wanted to kill me. And you know Searles. Huh? Searles is not going to, like, overtly be... He took it in good stride and essentially said, oh, you're lucky there's glass in between you and me or something like that. But the look in Searles' eyes was like, I'm not kidding around. You're lucky there's glass in between me and you right now.
He is absolutely... His looks, like, he's not ever looked like he's wanted to kill me, at least to my face. But there's a couple of instances where I was talking about something he clearly didn't want to talk about. This is before the YouTube channel with Hail Varsity. And the look he gave me, I did everything in my power. I mean, I had blood in my cheeks because I was biting my cheek so hard to keep from laughing out loud as I'm talking about something in a positive light he clearly didn't give a damn about. There may have been some hand gestures and... away we go. But, yeah, he can shoot a look. There's intensity.
Yeah. Yeah, that look he gave me, and I said, where's Rex Burkhead at? Oh, man.
It was like that side-eye, dead-eye.
Yeah, it should be noted, Searles did not say bye to me as he left the studio that day. He just walked right past my room and out the door.
He just forearmed you. Ron Brown, coming up. Hail Varsity Hour 2 on the way.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and welcome in a longtime guest and excited to spend a few minutes with Ron Brown, longtime coach at Nebraska, Director of Player Support and Outreach. Coach, how's your week? Thanks for the time.
Good, Schmitty. Good, Elijah. How you guys doing, man? Appreciate you having me on, man. I'm just getting after it, man. Had a good spring ball, and now just a variety of things that are happening in place with our players, getting in and out, getting ready for finals, recruiting visits, just a variety of different things that go on this time of year.
How did Ron Brown, Ivy League graduate, approach his finals?
Don't ask that question. Smitty, on air live, man. We got to prep on that one first. No.
Well, let's switch over to a little football. We'll prep you next time for the finals question. But just an overall takeaway from spring, Coach Brown. You've seen a lot of spring seasons.
Yeah, I just love. I love the training and I love to see the process. I love to see the progress, and I love watching Coach Roll work that through. I mean, he's from a background that is very, very strong in the process, coming out of the Penn State as a player for Joe Paterno. That was all, those guys were all about that. They were great teams because of that, and so It's been rewarding to watch it, and I'm excited.
Coach, what does it mean to you whenever you talk about Coach Rule and the development that Coach Rule's a guy that seems to understand that it really your entire program starts on the scout team?
You know, when you go through things yourself in your own life, and you you can sit up there and talk about New York City, which is where he's from. It's where I'm from originally, and people out in the Midwest can talk about New York City, this, that, and the other. But until you go there, you really don't know it. And that would be true if you're a player who's, gone through the ups and downs of scout team. Perhaps you were a walk-on. Perhaps you had to really work hard for everything. Imagine going through that as a player. And then when you become a coach, you really now have a panoramic view of what the process looks like. So, he's a great example of that. He's really intelligent. He's really smart. He could beat you with X's and O's and all those kinds of things. He's got all that ability. But what he really embraces that I really appreciate very much is that high-level work ethic and, the process, from day one all the way through, developing habits and reinforcing things over and over and over again, that slow grinding training that churns out some of these remarkable things that you've seen in his career, where he's turned programs around from low winning percentages for years to double figures and win teams, bowl teams. That doesn't come just from snapping your finger. It comes from a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of experience that he's been through himself.
Coach, I want to get your thoughts on something I thought was really cool. A week removed from the spring game, Matt Rule's up hosting a camp in Omaha a Saturday later. He's hosting a youth camp, grades 3 through grades 8, 2 different sessions, and you have players helping out with the camp, which is really cool. And I wanted to get your reaction to that camp, specifically the importance of camping in Omaha.
Wow, I tell you, it was something to witness, and it was so good. It really brought back to me, again, the importance of taking the show on the road right in your home state and being able to connect with former player like Abdul Muhammad and others who have had a great investment in the youth of Omaha. But see Coach Rule take that on, initiate that. I think that's the first time that I remember that we ever did anything like that up in Omaha. And so it was really special. It was one of the greatest. It was one of my fondest memories as a Nebraska, being a part of this Nebraska program here. It was just a great sight to see. We've had a lot of great players come out of Omaha over the years, as everybody knows. But to continually invest in them, and particularly when these young men are, in middle school, with their parents out there and so forth, that was special, no doubt.
Coach, with Abdul, you coached him, had a chance to talk to him a few times in my career, and it's really cool to see what he's doing in Omaha with the Boys and Girls Club, and just a thought from you on what Abdul's done and that Nebraska connection he still has.
Well, he's been sensational. I'm so proud of him, and I love him. I've always have. I remember George Darlington and I going out to see him out in Los Angeles and Compton. He grew up in one of the toughest neighborhoods in this country. He has grown up around all kinds of things, gunfire and everything. He even had a bullet lodged in him and continued to play for us. This guy, he came in at 160 57 pounds. We were talking about it the other day, and he was throwing his body into people when he played for us. He was not only was a great receiver, quick, change of direction, great hands, but taking hits across the middle of the field, laying out, when in doubt. We always had a saying, when in doubt, lay out for those receivers, and those guys were just, they were all very courageous, but Abdul was the leader. He was the leader of what we called the itty-bitty committee. They were tiny little receivers that were running around with quickness, catching balls. We didn't throw the ball very much, but we had tremendous work ethic. They were great perimeter blockers. They were huge in those national championship runs, and he was the smartest player that I've ever coached. I mean, in terms of an individual position, no one outgraded Abdul Muhammad in preparation for a game. He knew every position on the field, and that's his knowledge right now, and his what he's been through as a player, but also as a man coming from difficult circumstances, overcoming those things, and now pouring into those youngsters and making a connection with Coach Rule and our staff. It's great. It's almost. There's not enough words to cover it.
Coach, one of the things about Abdul Muhammad is I feel like he really represents, though he's not from here, he really represents the values of the state of Nebraska. Resiliency, toughness, fearlessness. The list goes on and on. I want to get your thoughts, being that the Husker football program does represent the state as a whole. What does it mean to you to be a Nebraskan?
Certainly, growing up here in Nebraska, you hear about this all the time. And it's wonderful when people really adopt that and live by that. And I think this state really has a high level of incredible work ethic. I mean, you just look at just the way we do life here. We're farmers, we're ranchers. The weather is tough. Even when the weather gets nicer, you have tornadoes that people have to go through, the ups and downs. There's been all kinds of issues, and these people continually bounce back. Great resiliency. But you know what? It's not just reserved for Nebraskans. Abdul is a Californian, and he had a different kind of tribulation in his life. But he always wanted to be a player here at Nebraska. He wore number 27. He loved Irving Fryer. He loved the Nebraska of the early 80s. When we were recruiting him, he was recruited by so many others, but it wasn't a real hard sell. And I think him being here, with the work ethic that he has, the intelligence, the ingenuity, the way he figures things out, the way he bounces back, that's what Nebraska is all about. Even though he's from California, he knows what Nebraska is all about. And I love the fact that he's working with those young kids at Omaha and making a difference in their lives.
Coach, you just touched on that Nebraska brand and doing a little research on Abdul. We're talking Miami, championship Miami. We're talking the Buffs. We're talking USC. We're talking Nebraska. And during the late 80s, early 90s, one team threw it super efficiently. The other three threw it a lot. And that speaks to the kind of the brand wow, doesn't it? A little bit of just being able to go in to California and get a guy like Muhammad.
Well, Coach Osborne had done a great job as an assistant coach before he became a head coach of recruiting California and opening the doors. And we had some really talented players, even guys who radiated in the passing game. Guys like Vince Ferragamo, for example, was a great player from out there. And so we had players that because of Nebraska's greatness. We had been national champions in the 70s, but somebody had to go out there. It's like the gold rush, man. When I tell our players, look, man, when you go out, when you hear about the 1849 gold rush, people weren't. Nobody was mailing the gold in back east. I mean, you had to go out there and get it, and you had to go out there and painfully work for it. And I think that's what this program was about. Coach Osborne went out there, literally got in homes out there. George Darlington went out there and did a fantastic job recruiting great players. Some of our best players came from Southern California. Not all of them, but but a lot of them were really good players. And so any of us who went out there had an opportunity to make instant connection with people, even though we were 1,500 miles away.
Ron Brown's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Director of Player Support and Outreach, longtime assistant for the Big Red. Coach, we'll get you out on this, and it's been fun to spend some time with you. Thanks for taking the time. The narrative on Nebraska for a while under Coach Osborne was you can't or you don't win the big one. How did you and how did Coach and the rest of the staff respond for the players from a training standpoint?
Oh, yeah, we heard it all the time. That was a recruiting nemesis for us. That's what people used. It's what we heard in the media. It's what we heard everywhere nationally as well. I heard it from my friends back east. You know, you guys can't win the big one. But so I would say that, yes, we definitely heard it. But 1990 is when it really kind of hit a peak for me. You know, I remember we had just lost to Georgia Tech in the Citrus Bowl. That was a tough loss because we had lost 3 out of our last 4 games. We were ranked high going into the Colorado game. Then we lose to Colorado. Then we end up losing to Oklahoma. And then we end up losing to Georgia Tech, which was the eventual national champion that year along with Colorado. So Coach Osborne got us all together, and he said, listen, boys, look, we're hearing all this stuff going around. If you guys can get jobs, you better take them because we might get fired. And, you know, it was a shocking statement, but nobody left. We all sat there and looked at each other with our mouths open as if we thought that we'd never hear anything like that. And you know what? Every guy there, I think, had a resolve to say, you know what? Nah, man, we're not going anywhere. Our staff had been together a long time, and Coach Osborne made some great moves from that point on. What I loved about him is that he didn't bury his head in the sand. And even though we were 9-3 and ranked 24th in the nation, and people were shouting for our jobs, Coach Osborne stayed the course. And within 3 or 4 years, we were playing in the national championship game. We went on that great run. Sometimes you don't know how close you are when you seem like you're so far away.
As far as that closeness, what was the difference from a tweak, I guess?
Yeah, you know, I think there were some tweaks. I think defensively we felt like we needed to get more speed on the field. Even Georgia Tech, not only Miami or Florida State, but even Georgia Tech outran us in those bowl games. We had to find people that could run. So we made some moves on defense. You know, we took a defense. Our linebackers became like defensive linemen and defensive ends. We had safeties that moved into linebackers. Ed Stewart and Trev Albers and people like that were people now playing. They were athletic guys that were playing closer to the ball. Then we had corners that you could move to safety, guys like Kareem Moss, and some of those people could go into the safety position. Or sometimes you'd get a talented athlete like a Tony Veland, and who could play quarterback, was a great runner, but you could move him at safety. And then we found legit true corners. We found NFL corners, guys that could run and cover, and George did a great job of coaching those guys up. And then offensively, we didn't change a whole lot. We did get a little bit more of a speed package with 10 personnel. We had 4 wide receivers on the field at the same time and passing downs. Abdul and the itty-bitty committee, those guys could all run. They weren't big guys. They didn't have high statistics, but they could all run and they could scare you a little bit down the field. But we still maintained the bread and butter of the program, the physicality, the tenacity, banging people around, out-blocking people, out-tackling people, all that. But those few tweaks, and then, of course, a great quarterback like a Tommy Frazier, or a great difference-making back like a Lawrence Phillips, all of those, just all those tweaks, and then a great player here and there really probably put us over the edge.
Ron Brown with us. Coach, we'll do this again. Thanks for a few minutes with us.
You bet. Enjoyed as usual, guys. God bless you.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Let's say hi to the Hall of Fame coach, Gary Barnett, with us, Colorado Northwestern. Coach, how we doing? Thanks for the time.
Oh, doing fine, Chris. Just as we were talking off the air, we're in this mode where we're just about to wrap up everything in Arizona and head to Colorado, and you're sort of in between. You don't really want to leave, but you got to go, and you're a little eager about going, but you're not totally sold on it yet. So we're in between boxes and emptying refrigerators, freezer. You know how it goes. So maybe you don't know how it goes. You got two places. That's what happens. So.
Well, I talked to my mother, and she's back in Nebraska, but it's been a road trip back. But she gets me updated on the war on leftovers. And I'm interested. Are you a good leftover eater?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No waste. Hopefully,
Same.
I don't have any problems. So, yeah.
So I got to ask you this: U.S. World and News Reports came out with the top rankings of states. Nebraska came in number 3, Colorado 16, Arizona 32. If you could live in any other state, where would it be?
Where would it be if I could, other than
the two really awesome spots you're at, Colorado and Arizona?
Oh, gosh, I don't know that I would in any of them. I mean, those are the two. You got a little bit of everything, I suppose. I don't even know, Chris. I don't think there's any place else I'd want to. I'll tell you what. We spent some time up in Idaho, and that we really carefully thought about whether that might be where we spend the summers or not. That seemed really cool. Idaho or Montana seemed fun in the summer, but I don't want to spend the winter up there.
Neither. Yeah, Idaho and Montana are nice to check out when it's 80 degrees.
Yeah, it was really nice in Idaho. Boise was a particularly nice place. We really enjoyed the Boise area, and actually thought, well, if we were 27 years old, maybe this is where we'd move. So maybe it'd be Boise.
Well, that leads us into the football part of things. What'd you think of Spencer Danielson, head coach at Boise, and he is not going to allow freshmen to they're banned from taking NIL dollars that first season.
I don't know how he can do that, but
he's going to try.
He's going to try, but I don't know how you do that. Frankly, I think everybody's just groping for answers to try to avoid 17 and 18-year-olds being, I don't know if the word spoiled is the right word, but being influenced by that sort of thing. It's a pretty big step, and it's a step that a dad would make, that a teacher would make, hopefully a coach would make. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting if he can make it happen. And probably Boise is one of the places where you can come close to doing it. And I don't know if you've ever spent any time in Boise, but you just walk into that city and you feel it. You feel the sort of the energy and we're going to win and we're going to be good and we're going to do it our way kind of thing. And it's the first time I went in there, you could just feel it. And so, hopefully, I hope it works for him. I don't know what he wants out of that. He's just trying to avoid spoiled children issue early on. But it'd be interesting to see how many people transfer it back in there, what he does with the portal. But, I sort of admire him for doing it. I don't want to be him, but I sort of admire him for doing it.
I agree with you, and he doesn't want guys that will take the easy way out. He doesn't want guys that are about handouts, and he kind of lost it. I think it might have been Wednesday yesterday or Tuesday with the number of portal tamperings. He hasn't called anybody out. I'm waiting for a coach to just lay out an opposing staff or coach with the tampering, but it's not happened yet. Do you think it actually come to a head here where you're calling out somebody?
Well, I think what'll happen is you can call people out, but I don't think the general population gives a rip.
Sure.
And so I don't know what you're going to get out of it. And until they have an enforceable rule, well, they have a rule, but until they can enforce it or there's an organization can enforce it, then all you're doing is crying. And you don't want to step down and lower yourself to doing the same sort of thing. But it's really difficult to go to work every day knowing that there's somebody calling your kids or some agent's calling your kids. And it's all done outside of the control of athletic departments. There's no athletic director that would come in and say, okay, let's start tampering. They would all say, no, we don't do that. Well, what happens is representatives of the athletic department start doing the tampering. And, we've started having these huge numbers of employees within the athletic department, and it's really hard to tell what some of them are doing. And so I think that causes a problem. And it's, sometimes the coaches don't even know what's going on. And I believe that. I believe that there's a lot of head coaches that don't have any idea that some of their people are tampering with other players and other coaches' players. And so I don't think there's a single coach that would ever say that's the right thing to do. But when it starts happening to you and you got to survive, then maybe you do drastic things and allow that to happen. But I don't think there's anybody that thinks that's a good idea or the right thing. But reality is there's really nobody enforcing any of the laws that surround that kind of topic.
It's Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, I want to ask about Joel Klatt's projection, and it's got his way too early top 25 out. Enjoy Joel's show and like seeing him at Big Ten Media Days when we get a chance to catch up. Interested in your thought. He has Nebraska in his preseason top 25. He's not blowing smoke or hyping up. I think he really looked at this, did some math, likes Nebraska's potential for quarterback play because last year's 31 turnovers. He likes Nebraska as a top 25 option. What do you think of it?
You got to understand, he did the Nebraska game last year. He's he's fully aware. And the other thing that is real, Chris, is there is a great deal of respect for those of us who played and coached against Nebraska for years and grew up with them. There's a great deal of respect that we all have for the Nebraska potential. And so part of that is what you're hearing from Joe, is that he just respects, everything there so much and the state and how they handle football. So, and all sports. But, you're a quarterback away last year from winning 7 or 8 games, or a quarterback's production away is what I should say, from winning 7 or 8 games. So, yeah, I could see that. And he has great respect for Matt Rule, I think, as well. So that's really understandable. I agree.
Gary Barnett's with us. Coach, got to wind down. What's your thoughts on the Big Ten power rankings that CBS Sports put out? And you have Ohio State and Oregon, your top 2 choices. Tom Fornelli did this list. And Michigan at 3, Penn State 4. SC and Washington 5 and 6. He puts Nebraska in at 7. My question to you is, do you wonder about a Michigan drop-off? And adjustment-wise, who out of the Pac-12 that you've seen the last several years is more ready than not for an adjustment to the Big Ten? Well,
I don't think there's any question that it's Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And if Kalen DeBoer played at State of Washington, I would say Washington, because they've done a great job there. But Jed Fish is going to do a great job at Washington, so I don't have any questions about that. And I think everybody in the Big Ten is going to be a little surprised to see how good and talented Oregon, SC, and Washington really are. And so it's interesting to have our rankings include those 3 teams in the top 8. Is that what you said?
I left off at 7, which is where Nebraska came in, followed by Iowa. Right. But you've got, your 3 helmets that roll in, Oregon, SC, and Washington, that are in the top 6.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty interesting. It speaks well for a smart move by the Big Ten to upgrade their level, and a level that everybody's always thought was pretty high anyway. But it's interesting that those 3 teams could come in and be in the top 6 in the projections anyway. So that'll spark some conversation.
Oh, it was fun talking about yesterday with what Lincoln Riley has done, and he went to the North Dakota State route, and that's physical and tough. And I mean, how quick can SC's defense get better is my question.
Well, they can get better pretty quick because they are loaded with talent, and you can throw a net outside your room, outside your door, and have as many players as you could possibly coach. And so to have so much homegrown talent and to have access to it, plus be able to recruit nationally, is everybody wants to be in that position, but they still have to do it. And I don't think I still don't think that everybody's in love with in Southern California with SC and UCLA going and playing a Big Ten schedule. So it's we'll have to see. There's going to be part of that too, the wear and tear on travel and the newness and that sort of stuff. But to have 3 teams ranked rated in the top 6, that's pretty impressive.
It's Gary Barnett. Coach, where are you playing this weekend?
Oh, let's see. We got Whisper Rock today and tomorrow, Desert Mountain on Saturday. Haven't decided on Sunday yet. So,
man. Well, hit them far and straight and putt for some dough, all right?
All right, Chris. Great being with you.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Let's get your gambling fix from our dear friend Daddy Burke at Daddy Burke 5, Burke's Beat Podcast. And, of course, his articles, burksbeat.com, where you can go. Daddy, welcome to the show. Thanks for jumping in. How's your Thursday going?
It's going good, yeah. Doing fine over here. I know last I was on, we were talking about the Kentucky Derby, and I'd mentioned to you guys that I hadn't looked at the horses. And then after I was on, noticed there was a Mystic Dan, had to throw a little piece on that, literally just based on the name, and we ended up on top. So finally get a pony to win for your boy during the Kentucky Derby. So we're feeling all right this week, guys.
Well, there was enough bourbon at Iowa Russ's party. I was feeling fine despite the finish. I don't even remember what horse I picked. That's how good the party was. So good for you, Danny, as you nailed the Kentucky Derby. How have the NBA playoffs and NHL postseason treated you so far? Any likes tonight with the NBA?
Yeah, well, the last bet that I made in the NBA was a couple nights ago, the first game between the Thunder and the Mavericks, which we'll get game 2 happening later tonight. I went with Oklahoma City laying 3 in that game, and honestly, a couple of reasons why is because the home court advantage, and it's going to be big for both of these teams, but primarily the Thunder, they do such a great job of showing up and showing out and being very bombastic and loud and supporting their group. A lot of these home courts do, but the Thunder, especially as a youthful, inexperienced team, really rely on that. And they also rely on their three-point shooting, which Dallas defensively is fine, allowing their opponents to shoot a lot of their attempts from back there. Oklahoma City made over 48% of their triples. So that certainly was a benefit. A lot of their bench production was a benefit. And that's kind of why I liked them in that first game, thinking that they'd get off to that good start, ride that momentum. And then the other side of it too is Dallas, and we saw this happen against the Clippers, is a team that needs to get accustomed to the game flow, accustomed to their opponent, take a little bit to make these adjustments, and then work on it. The Thunder have one of the better defenses coming into the playoffs, and they put that on display in game 1 against the Mavericks as well. I mean, how they were able to really force Luka into tougher situations. You bring the double team and force some of those role players to make those shots outside of Kyrie. That's how you get to Dallas. Now the question is, all right, how are the Mavericks going to scheme against that in game number 2? And that's going to be fascinating to find out. I haven't made a play in this game. I would lean a little bit toward taking the points at 5 with Dallas, just assuming they're going to make some of those adjustments. Their offense will be better. And then simultaneously, OKC's not going to almost shoot 50% from 3. And then I'd almost consider the total going over if you think the Mavericks are going to cover, because Dallas hasn't had that great of a defense. They got better once they brought in Gafford, once they brought in P.J. Washington. They're still about middle of the pack in a lot of regards. So I think the Thunder will get their work done offensively. Dallas will improve on that side of the ball, and then the total will end up going over. And then if you're considering a prop, the only thing I'd look at, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over 6.5 assists, because of the liable defense that the Mavericks present and all the offensive weapons. I think SGA will get focused on even more so, as you should, and then that will lead to more assist opportunities for him. He leads the team with 11.4 potential assists this postseason, had 9 in the first game, and you're getting plus money to the over 6.5. Maybe something to throw a little bit of cheese on, something to consider.
It's Danny Burke with us here, Burke's Best Bets. And Danny, before we get to the NHL game tonight between the Avs and the Stars, which I am going to ask you about, let's fast forward to tomorrow night and keep it in the NBA. My Nuggets, does the long layoff help them? Are the Nuggets on their deathbed? What's your take on Game 3 between Minnesota and Denver tomorrow night?
Man, I'm hoping and pleading with your Nuggets that they could come through, Elijah, because I've made a couple of bets on this series to go long. I bet on it to end in Game 7 and then in Game 6, and they were both plus money prices over plus 200. So if one of them hits, I'm going to make profit one way or the other. But obviously, Denver being down 2 games is not set up nicely for my play here. So again, I'm really hoping the Nuggets can come through, but all signs indicate that it's going to be Minnesota all the way. I'm not completely ready to discount Denver because they still are arguably the best team. I know they haven't looked like it the last 2 games, and now you're going in a tougher road environment with Minnesota, who appears to have more depth, which they do, and I think that needed to be understood by a lot of the national media heading into the postseason and in this series, because remember last year they didn't have Naz Reid, who won 6th Man of the Year. They didn't have Jaden McDaniels, and a lot of the members of the Nuggets team from last year in that first round played Minnesota. They beat them in a gentleman's sweep, but several players said that was their toughest matchup of that championship run. You have the emerging superstar in Edwards plus those 2 guys. It's not shocking to see them do a lot better, but I do expect a bounce back from Denver in the sense of them being able to keep it close. If I'm going to do something, haven't done anything yet, but what I've been monitoring is the total for this game. It's pretty low, about 204, somewhere around there. I'm going to keep seeing if it keeps dipping, because if Denver is going to keep it close, certainly they have to score more than they have the past 2 games, and I think that's going to lead to this game being a tad bit higher scoring.
And Danny, the little bit of insight I can give you, this comes from some journalists in and around the Nuggets, is that the big focus this week has been getting off to a good start for the Nuggets. They haven't done that really yet this postseason in any games. If the Nuggets get off to a start that looks like the Nuggets, I might look at the Nuggets money line personally. If they get off to a start in the first 6 minutes, that is close to what we expect from this Denver Nuggets team. Danny, to flip it over to NHL tonight, are you riding in Game 2 with Michael Dixon's Dallas Stars or Elijah Herbel's Colorado Avalanche? I think you know a guy who supports each side. Who are you going to make happy and who are you going to make sad with your pick here?
Unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to make you a little sad tonight, Elijah. And look, I mean, again, I haven't gone out there and touted this play with Dallas or anything like that, but in hockey, I haven't been going as crazy in as I have in years past. But Dallas, I was a big fan of this team last year. You have a young emerging goalie in Jake Ottinger, who you've been waiting to really burst at the seams of being a top-tier tender, and you've seen that from him throughout this postseason, obviously through the regular season, and their depth is just so nice from Dallas. They got the home crowd behind them. The market's showing them a little support in their matchup tonight against Colorado. I know how prolific this Avalanche team can be on the offensive side, but the goaltending advantage to me definitely goes with Dallas. You bring in the home ice, and then the depth I also very much like with Dallas and overall defense. I got to go with the Stars, my man. I'm sorry. I hate to go against you, Elijah. You know I'm typically trying to get on your side. I'll support you with the Nuggets. I'm leaning against you here with your Avalanche.
It's fair. It's a good Stars team. It's a win for the Avs to get one in Dallas before you bring them back to the altitude. I'm not sure you're necessarily wrong. I hope you are. But you know what? I don't blame you.
Danny, a thought here before we say goodbye with where this Knicks-Pacers series is going. I know it's 2-0 New York. Do the Pacers strike back? Any value in what's going to happen here in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I'm expecting the Pacers to bounce back. And even aside from the injuries we witnessed in Game 2, I've been banking on the Pacers to bounce back because I was planning on the Knicks to win Game 1 and then look to take plus 2.5 on the series spread with the Pacers, which I did give out, meaning they'd have to win the series or lose in 7 or 6 games. They have more depth. No, their defense isn't as good, but at some point, Tom Thibodeau and how much pressure he puts on these guys is going to wane, especially on the road. So I like the Pacers in those 2 road spots regardless. Now, Brunson's a little bit banged up. Mitchell Robinson still questionable. OG Anunoby is out. I like the Pacers to win the next 2 games. Don't love laying 7 with them, though. I think that's still a tad bit too high because of their defensive vulnerabilities, but I think they win the next 2 games.
Daddy, 15 seconds. How can folks find you? How can they check the podcast out? How can they find your work online?
Burksbeat.com, the website for a bunch of articles. Also post a link to my podcast there. Spotify and Apple if you want to search it. Burke's Beat is the name. And on Twitter, at DannyBurke5. Always appreciate you, fellas.
You're awesome, Danny. We'll come see you at Wrigley soon. All right?
Yes, sir. I'm counting on it, guys. I got a couple of seats and beers saved for you.
There we go. There's Danny Burke.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Big thanks to Danny Burke for joining us, BurksBeat.com. Burke's Best Bets, always a Thursday hit. Gary Barnett, Ron Brown, this hour. Good perspective from Coach Brown, and good to hear from Coach Barnett on some of that hype towards Nebraska. Brandon Vogel from Counter Read Today. Get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play can download the pod, the audio. That way, give us a rating. Tell us what you think. In a review, good, bad, or ugly. We'll take the feedback. Love it. Always subscribe if you want the video/digital portion. Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe there and give us a follow on Hail Varsity Radio at H Varsity Radio. The other Brian is checked in. He is taking notes on the Danny Burke suggestions and says, cheers, boys, and go Avs. Good to hear from you, the other Brian.
Go Avs.
Steven checks in and asks a great question. Is it football season yet? Nah, it's not, unfortunately. Are we going to do a double or nothing?
We can do a steak and a beer quickly here. Remember how I said back in hour 1, sometimes in radio, there's things that frustrate you, make you angry behind the scenes. You have to continue to be entertaining. Our files for this show today, which I've been recording as the show's gone on, have crashed and the computer is no longer responding. So it's one of those moments where I'm trying to find a way to make this entertaining.
So
my
everything
deep down pent up anger.
So everything. Ouch. So let me ask you this: are you going to have to dub from YouTube?
Oh, it's a problem for Elijah once this show ends. I think I can save most of the files. This one here we're doing now, we'll see how I'm going to be able to pull this for podcast form. I'm going to get creative.
Okay.
But it's my job to do so, and therefore I will.
Or you take a bat to said bullpen.
I could take a mic
in the studio.
Pull a Rob Childress.
Yeah. Rob's awesome. He'll get the fellas ready tomorrow. Big series for Husker Baseball. Tomorrow's show, I have not got a confirmation, but Jacob Padilla hopefully will check in hour 1. Pride of Fairbury is Bill Dolman. We'll get Billy D away from his red pen of death when it comes to grading future broadcasters of America. Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, Bill Dolman tomorrow. Brian Christopherson with Husker 24/7. Excited to talk to BC again. He's imaginary. He wears red. Clausburn with some picks on the pro side of things and some commentary, I'm sure. Claus likes to go with what's been going on in the world of sports. / just life in general. Always has an opinion on things, and we'll see if he makes me snort or laugh
Quickly
tomorrow.
here, before we get to our steak and a beer to get out, I've gone through the recovery files. The show's back. We're going to have a podcast form. Elijah Herbel, true professional, earning his paycheck today. Steak and a beer, though? We going hockey, we going NBA?
Let us go. Let's go NBA.
Okay. I'll take the Mavs.
Okay.
That is the game tonight, yeah?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Cleveland and Boston. Okay. So I gotta lay the 4.5 to you.
Yes.
It's no longer called the Chesapeake Energy Center, is it?
I don't know. Is it?
No, it's not. It was during Junior's era. Back at you tomorrow at 4 on Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.